Hey guys, we're back for episode 32 of the Popcorn Square podcast. And this one is titled Let's Talk Classics, Films You Should See. Now, this is going to kind of be like those news articles you see on maybe IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes, where they're like, oh, top 100 films you should see before you die. Sometimes they do this with music too. Top 100 songs you should listen to or albums before you die. So this is going to be a real cool episode. We're all going to go around the table and just list a few films. Of course, we're not going to have every single film that we think you guys should see, but for time's sake, we're going to throw out a couple and then have some dialogue about that. It is Neff, and I am joined with
Kage
and Buttons.
and alrighty, let's hop into it. Let's discuss 5. So I'll start off with my 5, and I'll jump through them pretty quickly here. And it's not in any particular order. I just jotted these down. I have The Lion King. Awesome animated movie, arguably the best animated film ever made. A lot of cool things going on with that film. A lot of things that I think children and adults would really appreciate. Great soundtrack as well. But just a very good film all around. I think every adult should watch it and watch it with their kids as well. It's a great film. It got a lot of praise when it did come out. It still holds up extremely well. A lot of philosophical aspects to the film, and I just think it's a really good film just for all demographics and all age groups. I just feel like everybody can appreciate it for what they take from the film. Second one is The Godfather, Francis Ford Coppola, Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Marlon Brando. I don't need to really speak about this film too much. I've talked about it before. Absolute classic, one of the best films ever made, and one of my favorites in particular. I think specifically Godfather 1 and 2. People do like Godfather 3, but I think 1 and 2 more specifically, probably the most important in that trilogy there. But like I named off a lot of those actors there. It's like just one of those films that this is one of those ones where it's absolutely on the list of top 10 movies ever made. I think any reputable website that talks about cinema or film will have The Godfather within that. Now, whether you like Godfather 1 or 2, that all comes down to subjectivity. Personally, I'm a fan of Godfather 1, 1972, but I do know a lot of people that were really fans of Godfather Part 2. And so that's one on my list as well. Interstellar, Chris Nolan, Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, another great film, sci-fi film. One of my favorites from Nolan, probably in my top 3. Very great film. A lot of things that I really like as well. A lot of philosophical stuff as well. A lot of family focused things going on with that film that I really liked. And from a visual aspect, absolutely amazing. With Christopher Nolan, guys, we know what we're getting. We're getting great visuals, number one. The score is going to be great. I want to say Hans Zimmer did that score, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But altogether, one of my favorite films and one of my favorite Christopher Nolan films. Great sci-fi epic there. Alien, 1979. Sigourney Weaver. Everybody knows this. A bunch of other talented actors as well. Ridley Scott's second film shooting after he did The Duelist. I've actually been watching a lot of documentaries on the behind-the-scenes documentation of Alien with Dan O'Bannon, stuff like that. He's the writer behind Alien. But once again, another sci-fi film, probably really the first in its market where you have a horror sci-fi film on the big screen. Alien is a film that I know a lot of older people can really remember and say, wow, that movie really scared the whatever out of me, you know what I mean? And it's a film that has stood the test of time, and it's a film that people really still talk about now. And we have some Alien stuff coming out later in this summer. It's still a franchise that people really look up to for that aspect of sci-fi. You don't really see that, and it was really the first to market for that. So Alien 1979 is on my list as well. Apocalypse Now, another Marlon Brando, Francis Ford Coppola epic as well. Just another awesome movie based upon a book. I forget the name of the book, Heart of Darkness, I believe it is, but they do set it in Vietnam. I guess it's more applicable for the time that the movie came out and more applicable for the audience at that time as well. So once again, another epic film, war film, just an awesome film that everybody needs to watch. And then the last one on my list is going to be The Matrix from 1999. Keanu Reeves, Carrie Ann Moss, Lawrence Fishburne, the Wachowski brothers, now the sisters. But just an epic film, a film that's extremely ahead of its time. There's still a lot of things that I see in today that reflect in The Matrix 25 plus years ago. So once again, one of my favorite films, probably in my top 10 of all time films. The Matrix, I always stand by that. Once again, when I talk about the writing and the ideas behind the films, that's what really grabs me when I'm watching cinema. And The Matrix is very strong from a philosophical aspect, and just the things that they talk about that the future could actually become. I think that film is actually might be the best depiction of actually what you're actually seeing today. So The Matrix has really stood out to me, and it's a one-of-a-kind film that we got there in the late 1990s. So that's my list. I'll pass it off to Buttons, and then we'll hit Kage here. But Buttons, what do you got there?
Okay, so, I kind of really struggled with this list because, on the one hand, my taste in movies is very varied, and I could sit here and tell you tons of movies that I think that you should see, but, based off of the type of movies you like, it might not be your cup of tea. And that's, mainly because it's like, oh, I enjoy anything from, kids movies, and I know Neff had Lion King on there, but on my list for today, I did not put any truly like kid movies on there, just because in my opinion those kind of fall under their own special set of rules and everything else for me. Just like I don't have a ton of comedies on my list either, because most people don't associate comedies with being like the height of good movies and things like that. They're like, oh, they're just there for the jokes, there's no depth to them. As is demonstrated on nobody's enjoyment of Argyle. But for me, I'm not going to mention
that since you mentioned.
I'm not gonna. I swear this is gonna turn into like a drinking game one day, where anytime I mention it, the other two are gonna take
You've
a
got
shot.
to take a shot.
Or put my quarter in the swear jar or something. But some classics that are on here, and then just some movies that I always enjoyed and I would rewatch in a heartbeat. So one of the older movies is To Kill a Mockingbird. That one, the first time I was introduced to it was actually in school, but it's still one of those movies. It holds up even though it is so such an older movie. And I say that because it was made well before I was born, so I can do that. But To Kill a Mockingbird, it's just one of those classic movies that really, it's got so much depth to it. It's based off of a book, obviously, but it's such a statement piece, and the acting was top notch. The story that it delivers is just a great story in general. So, I'm sure everybody's heard of it, and if you haven't seen it, just take some time. And, it might be difficult for you to get through just because it is in black and white, and some people kind of are immediately turned off when they hear, oh, it's a black and white movie, it's old, it's going to be boring, or I'm not going to understand it because it was filmed in a different time and they talk weird and all that other fun stuff. But, if you can sit through Shakespeare in Love, and not have problems, then you'll be able to sit through To Kill a Mockingbird. But Jurassic Park is on my list because that was the first time as a kid that I can remember truly being terrified watching a movie. And granted, that's because I was like, I think 6 or 7 when I watched it for the first time. But it holds up to today. Like the animatronics and the graphics and stuff that they did, I can sit down and watch it today and not have any problems with that film. It's well thought out. It's, the way that it was shot, and Spielberg, the way he, directed it, it was one of, at least for me, it was a very career defining role for him. As far as directing that movie. And he's directed tons of movies that are great, E.T. and Super 8, and just like the list goes on and on. Even Jaws has its place. But Jurassic Park for me is going to be one that I always recommend. If you've never seen it, I don't care if you don't like dinosaurs, like just watch it. It's you got to watch it, right? Life is Beautiful. That one, you will cry. You will cry big, fat, ugly tears, and if you don't, then you're not human. Because it's about concentration camps. So, it has this way of telling the story of this dad who's trying to, get his son through this, through the time that they're in the concentration camp. And he does it by turning it into a game. We have to do what they say because, otherwise we won't win the game, So, I mean, it's a father trying to make the best out of his situation for his little boy. And like I said, it's one of those movies you will be crying. And so I really recommend. The acting was phenomenal. The way that it was shot was so realistic, so just pivotal to like understand, because all of the people who are Holocaust survivors, they're all pretty much gone now. And all we have left are their stories and, pictures that we had and, what we have written down about what happened during that time. And movies like this really drive home the intensity of the situation and, just the human element that went into making this movie. Like, you can tell everybody, they knew that they were being part of something bigger by making that film. So it's very impactful, it's very intense. And, going off of something that is kind of a very far step to the side, Forrest Gump.
Good one.
So Forrest Gump, again, it's a piece of American history. And the way that they tell that story, the music, the acting, just the weird character himself. Forrest Gump is just like a very random, he's not, I mean, they make him into a war hero, but really he's like, I just kept running because Jenny told me to run. But it's got its own style. It's got its own way of telling that story, and it's just so engaging throughout the whole movie. Always keeps my interest, and just like the little bits and pieces here and there of doing it. I mean, some people, I've heard their opinions, where they hate this movie or they hate how Tom Hanks portrayed the character or whatever. But to me, I feel like everybody should watch this movie at least once in their life. Whether you end up saying you hated it or you loved it, that's on you, obviously. Right. But I feel like you should watch it. Narrowing it down to 5. My Fair Lady, okay? So I love My Fair Lady. It's Rex Harrison, I believe. That's his name. I think it's Harrison. And then Audrey Hepburn. So it's a beautiful story. I mean, sure, not everybody likes musicals, but if you do like musicals, you can't not like My Fair Lady, because it's just beautifully performed and beautifully produced. And yeah, it's an older film, and you can't really say anything other than it had the top actor and actress to play those roles during this time. You really can't imagine it being done any better than the way that they made it, for the period that it was made in. It's just a beautiful story. The way that they told it, the music in it is really so damn catchy. And it's just a movie that I think everybody should experience once in their life, just because it's so well put together. And I don't know if I think I did 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess that would have been my fifth one on my list. I got like at least another 10 on here, but I'll go ahead and pass it off to Kage.
Yeah, so both of you mentioned a lot of great movies that are on my list. I think we can all agree that our lists are way bigger than 5.
Yes.
way bigger than 5. Jurassic Park, Matrix, my God, Matrix, that's pretty damn high. Lion King was a big, big, big deal. I remember when that came out, how big of a deal that was. The line, it was sold out for weeks. It was line wrapped around building type thing. That's how big Lion King was. So definitely a big one. For me, it's very, just like Button said, it's extremely difficult to break this down to 5. So here's my 5, not in necessarily any order. Big one for me is The Fifth Element. I feel like that's a part of American pop culture at this point. Everyone has either seen it or heard about it. So many great actors. You got Mila Jovovich, Bruce Willis, Chris Rock is in it.
No,
Not Chris Rock.
Chris Tucker.
Chris Tucker. Sorry. Thank you. Totally different Chris. My bad. But yeah, and then we even had Gary Oldman in there. Just all-star cast, over-the-top action, very, very strange film. The movies I picked were not necessarily movies that were, how should I say, like the biggest, like iconic. I mean, they're iconic and they're almost a little underground movies
More-
you haven't
more
heard.
personal to
More
you.
personal,
Right.
yeah. So that's kind of what I picked for.
Yeah.
So Fifth Element's a big one. One that I don't hear anyone talking about on this podcast or otherwise, Titan AE. Anybody remember that?
Yeah.
I remember.
Okay, because
yeah.
you
It
everyone.
was an
Vaguely, yeah,
underground, it's
vaguely,
an
yeah.
Okay,
underground
so
animated movie, yeah.
The closest thing we have to that would be Treasure Planet, and
That was Disney, yeah.
Disney, and everybody talks about Treasure Planet, but I don't hear anyone on any forum, on Reddit, on YouTube. I don't hear anyone talking about Titan AE. Everyone talks about Treasure Planet.
Didn't Titan AE, they actually had some pretty good voice actors
Mm-hmm.
for Titan AE. Was it Matt Damon was the voice of,
I think
it was either Matt Damon or Brad Pitt, I feel. I feel like there was a pretty big name behind the main.
Matt
character.
Damon.
So, okay.
Yeah, so just to name off some of the cast here, Titan AE had it came out in 2000. It had Matt Damon, John Leguizamo, Drew Barrymore, Bill
Yeah.
Pullman.
Yeah. It's got some big names.
Just to name a few. Ron Perlman was in it. Jim Cummings, who played Winnie the Pooh, like as a voice actor.
Yeah.
So fun fact.
Yeah,
so
Jim Cummings is a big voice actor.
yeah, so we got a lot of big names on here for this. So Titan AE, I feel like, is very, very underrated. And all of these films that I've listed here, we're talking about classics. Classics, I don't just define as the time period that they came out, not just the 90s. I define classic as something that's not only older, but something that I can go back and watch at any time, something that is timeless. You know what I mean? I don't look at this movie and go, "Oh, this movie came out in the '90s and it shows." You know what I mean? Like, it's still entertaining. It still holds up to this day, whether it be through the story that you're trying to tell, the actors that you have. It's just solid, good time. So yeah, Titan AE is a big one. Fifth Element's a big one. Another one, Fight Club.
Fight Club.
I love Fight Club.
Talk about Fight Club.
Oh crap! I need to take that off my list. I shouldn't say my bad. But yeah, like Fight Club was just a smart movie. Starring Brad Pitt,
Mr. Norton.
and Edward Norton.
Yes.
That was actually the first movie I'd ever seen him in.
Helen Bonham Carter.
Yeah, those were actually the first. This was the first film I ever saw those two in. And it's like the psychological aspect. You think the entire movie is this, and at the very end they hit you with a twist, not an M. Night Shyamalan crap twist. Like, this was the first big twist in the film that I was like, oh wow. I remember.
I did not see that coming.
I really did not see that coming. And it was just, and then like, I love how, just like in the Saw movies, it tells you the whole movie, like you see everything, and at the very end, it's like flipping a switch. They backtrack. They show you little scenes of what was actually going on, and
Yeah.
you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
This whole time.
This whole time. And then, like, it just that ending scene in Fight Club, you know, they hold their hands and watch society crumble type. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of metaphors in this movie. It's very smart. And he's talking about how we sell ourselves for, like, commercialism. Like, there's a lot to
Yeah.
unpack
Yeah.
in Fight Club.
Huge,
So
huge social commentary on it. Yeah.
Project Mayhem, y'all. But but another one a little more down to earth, Hook.
Oh, Robin Williams.
Hook starring Robin Williams. That's right. Rest in peace, legend. Hook is a movie that is very near and dear to my heart. I've always liked the pirate movies. I've always liked the Peter Pan story in general, you know, never grow up. And I feel like that story was just a very different take. The idea of he left Neverland and he's all grown up and he has forgotten what it's like to not only be a kid, but he forgot his own legacy.
Yeah.
He was a hero. He was loved, not just by a group of people, but an entire land, you know, Neverland. And
He
then
had a huge family.
He had a huge family, exactly. It wasn't just Superman has fans in Metropolis type thing. Like, this was a very from the heart story. So I really miss Hook. I feel like they don't make movies like that anymore. You know, like just the movies that get you in your heart. Like, we're all about hiring the best actors and throwing as much CG as we could. And movies like Hook, it was a lot of practical effects. It was a lot of tripwire, fault like hanging, doing tricks. You know,
Yeah.
he was flying.
Very, very minimal CGI.
Very minimal CGI, and it just hit in all the right places. It was just absolutely fantastic. I will still watch Hook. I saw that as a kid in the theater, and I will still watch it now. So yeah, that's a good one. And finally, one that none of you are going to see coming, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. That is a comedy that I will never get tired of. It is my humor to a T.
Are you a fan of The Clerks?
Yes,
What about Dogma?
absolutely.
Dogma is my jam.
Alanis Morissette as God, let's go. Let's go. Matt Damon as the angels trying
Yeah.
to stop.
Damon and Affleck.
Yeah. And they always got to be in movies together, right?
Yeah.
So
Like Jay and Silent Bob.
yeah. I mean, that movie had an all-star cast. It had, obviously it had those two. It had not Chris Tucker, but it did have Chris Rock in it.
Chris Rock was.
Yeah, he was in it.
Well, but are we talking about Jay and Silent Bob, or are we talking about Dogma?
Both,
Oh, okay.
I think.
I don't remember who all was in
Did
Jay
they
and Silent
intertwine?
Bob.
Yeah.
No, because he
But-
was.
well,
You just
Dogma-
remember
No,
those two main
Chris
characters.
Rock was the
Yeah.
director
Oh,
at the end of the
okay.
movie. So for
Okay.
those that don't know,
It's been a hot
Jay,
minute.
Jay and Silent Bob are trying to stop a movie from being made
Right.
about them. So the whole movie follows their adventure across the country trying to get to Hollywood, and it's a stoner movie.
Right.
Let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
I don't
All their movies are.
Yeah, but it's still funny. It's still funny. It's just
They
out
have
of
their own brand of humor.
They really do. They really do. Just out of pocket stuff that they say. A lot of pop culture references. There's a Scooby Doo segment in there where they're hitching rides across the country, and they happen to come across the Mystery Machine, and then people that are dressed just like them, but it's a little off, if you
Yeah.
know what I mean. So it's really cool. I think Princess Leia was in it. Mark Hamill was in it.
Yeah.
Actually,
Most of their movies, once they had gotten some notoriety, they would call and ask like, "Hey, do you guys want to do a cameo in the movie?"
Yeah.
Or they'd reach out to them and be like, "Yeah, I want to be in your movie. Like, I want a
Yeah,
little part in
that's what
there."
I mean. Is like
It is very huge pop culture, related to all of their movies really, but they have huge pop culture references as well as, again, they have that huge social commentary on like just their own culture and, the way that it influences society.
Yeah.
The different aspects of the changing culture throughout, the years, especially because like you said, a lot of their stuff is related to, like how you kind of went through that grunge phase, and like you said, introducing like weed and or pot or whatever you want to say, into
Yeah.
culture and how it influenced, the youth of America going through that and it becoming, popularized and then, accepted in society and then not accepted and then, stereotyped.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going through it right now, and there's a lot of big names just
Yeah.
attached to Jay and Silent Bob. I mean, aside from Jay and Silent Bob themselves, Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes, you got Ben Affleck on there. You have Matt Damon, Shannon Elizabeth. Come on, guys. We all remember her. American Pie and
Salma Hayek was in
13
Dogma,
Ghosts.
yeah.
She was in that. But of course, you got Will Ferrell, you got Chris Rock, Eliza Dushku, Ali Larder, Jason Biggs, and it
Yeah.
was funny because
American Pie.
he was in American Pie, and it's funny because it breaks the fourth wall because he's like, I'm always haunted by the pie. It's like you're the guy who messed with the pie,
Yeah.
like, and he's like, I'm haunted by it.
Yeah.
So they had that, and then of course Mark Hamill's character is the cock knocker. And he loses his hand, and it's funny. He goes, "Not again!" and he looks at the carols like,
Yeah.
so that was good.
That's awesome. What do you guys think about some of the impact of these films?
Wait,
I know I could.
That was your last one?
That was
Yeah,
my
was
last
that?
one.
Yeah. What do you guys think about some of the impact of these films? I think we can talk about with The Godfather. We already know that kind of. I think that was a turning point for a lot of like mafia films, and I think that kind of spawned not only a trilogy, but it kind of kicked in the door for things like Casino, Goodfellas, even The Sopranos to an extent. And it's still a movie
Was
that
Scarface around the
Scarface
same
is not a
time?
mafia thing.
Well, no, it's not a mafia.
Scarface
but I
is
mean,
It's in that-
82, 83.
It's in that genre.
Scarface is
but-
83.
It's like
not
heavy
even in that
criminal.
genre.
It's like a
It's not even in
criminal
that
movie.
genre, but the thing is, it's just synonymous with Al Pacino. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like when he did The Godfather, it was like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
uber famous, everything he's in that. But I think, and to the point, I guess I can see what you guys are saying. Like it just kind of spring loaded a bunch of other things to come after
Yeah.
that. And so when you think anything when it comes to like cinematic movies, when it comes to like mafia stuff, you think, oh, The Godfather. Even if you haven't watched it, it's just one
Right.
of those things. Everybody knows Marlon Brando with the rose and the tuxedo and the cat. You know what I mean? So that's
I
one
just
of
remember
those.
the horse in the bed.
We all remember the horse in the bed.
An offer he cannot refuse.
Yeah, and then this on the day of my
That's what
daughter's
happens.
wedding.
That's what happens
that down
when you mess
perfectly.
around.
You got that down perfectly. But yeah, just for that one. And then Alien, once again, like we talked about with that, it goes without saying, you spawned a whole franchise. We're even getting an Alien this summer. We had prequels regarding Alien. It just took a different approach to the sci-fi horror aspect of films. Were there sci-fi movies that had horror aspects? Yes, but I think Alien was really the first one to make that turning point to where it was like, oh man, this is really next level scary, especially with the visual effects that Ridley Scott had used. Apocalypse Now, once again, Francis Ford Coppola coming out after The Godfather and stuff like that. Just the way he shot that film, you could say it's arguably the best adaptation of a Vietnam-esque era war film. You know what I mean? So, and a lot of great actors in that as well. Like I said, Martin Sheen, Marlon Brando as well in that one as well. And then The Matrix. once again, a lot of these films spawn trilogies and a lot of extra things around the films. The Animatrix, they're
Yes,
still
excellent.
doing Matrix films. We just got
Excellent.
news that they're actually putting another Matrix film into production soon. So, I'm not too excited about that. I don't think anybody here at this table is super
No.
excited about it, just from the direction they went with Matrix Revolutions. But still, it just speaks to the staying power of the Matrix films. The Lion King, can't skip that. We already know about that as well. There's been multiple Lion King films, and they brought it back in I want to say, a live action adaptation of
It
it.
is a
Although
live
it's all
action.
It is.
CG, but it is a live action adaptation.
They're
So
still calling it
yeah,
live action.
the
Lions
only movie
don't
you're
talk?
probably
Well, I think I'm just saying like the realism of
Correct.
the actual animals
is,
versus the
yeah.
character
Correct.
version
The animated
of them.
style.
Yeah.
The only one that I don't have on my list that doesn't have really a sequel or anything like that is Interstellar. And that's because, for the most part, I believe outside of the Batman trilogy, Nolan doesn't do sequels to his movies. So I think outside of that, Interstellar does stand out on his own as a good sci-fi film. And I think you just have to praise it for the good writing behind it, the score behind it, the acting behind it, and I think the approach that Nolan took with that film. It's one of his best films, in my opinion. But that's just, the impact that I see from a lot of these films. A lot of them do have staying power for 40 to 50 plus years. A lot of them have trilogies, and these are films that people still resonate with and still talk about every day. So what do you guys got? Buttons, what do you got as far as impact of these films?
So I mean, if you're talking about like direct sequels and things like that, I mentioned Jurassic Park as one of mine, and we already know that
Yeah.
one's a huge franchise. I mean, we just had Dominion.
Yep.
Was the latest movie in that series, and so I mean, impact wise, it's pop culture. It's a huge thing. Like, people know that logo with the skeleton dinosaur, and if you had one of them Jeeps rolling down the road, everybody would be like Jurassic Park. Like, people would recognize those logos and things like that. But the other ones, I mean, Forrest Gump, they'd had war movies before Forrest Gump, and they've had war movies after Forrest Gump. As far as that movie being impactful, I gotta say, like, the soundtrack is probably one of the best things in that movie. It has a lot of, like, World War II, Vietnam kind of music, because that was being made during that time. Forrest Gump obviously happens during Vietnam, the Vietnam War. So, I mean, socially speaking,
The counterculture was big.
yeah,
then,
exactly. So, I mean, the impact that would have had on American culture and things like that is you have this huge, wide, epic story of Forrest Gump's life from when he's like a little boy and can't walk to, all the way after he's been declared a war hero and then becomes some multi-millionaire businessman, and finds out he has a son that he's got to take care of. And he can, so I mean, it just kind of walks you through the life of a regular American, goes to war, American dream, whatever you want to call it. It's huge, epic. It's almost like an odyssey, right? So when you look at literature in general and they talk about an odyssey, Forrest Gump is an odyssey. It's because, I mean, it spans his entire life, and it just shows all these different impactful ways that not just society, but, his own personal experience shaped his life and created this, this story that seems, from the outside looking in, that it could happen to anybody. There was nothing special about him. You know what I mean? Like, Forrest Gump was just an average American, and he, goes on all these adventures and has all this things that go on in his life. He lives, he loves, he thrives through adversity. It had plenty of adversity in his life, but he thrived. And so I think the overall enduring message of Forrest Gump is what you should take out of it, in terms of, like, hey, You know, you're going to have bad times in your life. It's about how you treat,
Right.
you know, how you overcome those obstacles, how you're like your mentality behind it. I mean, he has Lieutenant Dan who loses his legs, but he sits there and he's like, Lieutenant Dan, like, you know, what happened to your legs? But I mean, you know, Forrest could only understand to a certain degree the depth of grieving that Lieutenant Dan was going through, and he tries to convey that to Forrest. But at the end of the day, he's all like, you know, it shows like he eventually got over it, you know, like Lieutenant Dan eventually got over it. But looking at how he interacted with Forrest, it's kind of like he understood to a certain degree the simplicity of Forrest's way of looking at the world and how he lived. And I think it helped him, you know, work through what he needed to work through as well. Because there was no deeper meaning behind what Forrest did in life, like apart from like, I love Jenny, you know, like that was about as deep as Forrest got. You know, it's like, I was running, so I just decided to keep running.
Keep running.
So I mean, that I would say is the importance of that one. Life is Beautiful. It's just the importance of not forgetting about the horrible things that happened. There's no more depth into that other than it was just a great way that the movie was done, to convey that message. As far as My Fair Lady goes, I again, great acting, great music. What's not to like about it?
Right.
It's a piece that is a little snapshot of the way movies used to be made, and what went behind them, and these stories that are told that are timeless stories that everybody can enjoy. There's humor, there's, drama, there's a message behind everything about, how to treat other people, how to treat yourself. And, at the end of the day, some people look at the characters and say, oh, these characters are flawed or those characters are flawed. Don't read too much into it. Just enjoy the damn movie.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Like it's a musical, It's not
has a
supposed
function,
to.
yeah.
It's supposed to entertain you. You're supposed to go in, enjoy it, have some lighthearted moments, some jokes in there, But ultimately, it's just a beautiful story. And I think I hit all of them. Forrest
think?
Gump, Life is Jurassic Park.
Yeah, you had Jurassic Park first, yeah.
Yeah, so.
All right, Kage, floor is yours, sir. Let's talk about some of the cultural impact of maybe more of the important ones that you think stand out for you.
Yeah, I mean, culturally wise, the very first thing that comes to mind is The Fifth Element. We're in 2024, and people still know the reference multipass. Like, people still know what that is. Like, say what you will about the actors. Mila Jovovich, she's most known now for the Resident Evil movies. But it's like, I implore you people, me speaking as a gamer, I prefer Fifth Element over her gaming movies.
Actually, I think her next movie is, I think she's going to be in like a. I'll look it up.
Yeah, look it up.
It's a departure.
She does. She was doing in the early 2000s. She was doing a lot of action films. Ultraviolet, if anyone remembers that.
Yep.
And of course all the Resident Evil movies and The Fifth Element. She's in the action, but The Fifth Element was just iconic. It's a part of American culture that still sticks to this day. It's crazy. The blue alien opera singer. I mean, everybody knows about that. And fun fact, I think that was real. That's what's scary.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say scary, like talented, like voice wise. I didn't know the human voice could do that. So yeah, that's just that cultural.
She has
pop
such a
culture
huge
like that.
filmography, guys. I'm just gonna throw that.
Oh
out.
yeah, I know she does, and she was Ukraine or Russian or Ukrainian.
She's Russian.
Okay, yeah.
Russian.
So she has a long, and now she has a kid. I don't know if her daughter's
Dash.
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 Okay.
Her daughter.
Okay. Yeah.
I just saw a
Is she
thing-
doing acting? Is she?
I don't know if her daughter's doing anything, but I just saw.
Because
a
I know
thing on-
Mila Jovovich was a model.
She's 9 years old.
Okay. Okay. So we'll see if she follows in her mother's footsteps. But of course, Hook. Now, Hook doesn't have that many. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you. The movies on my list, I don't really feel have a lot of cultural impact, but I feel like they should. Okay.
I just saw a trailer for this movie. It's called Breathe. It's kind of like a suspense thriller, but it's supposed to be like in the futuristic world where oxygen is hard to come by. There's like a mother and daughter who are held up in like this building, and Mila Jojovich's character is trying to break into it because I guess there's something in there like, I don't know, some research or something that they're trying to get a hold of, that the dad had gone off. But I guess the dad was like a researcher, and so she's like, oh, the research he has can save us all or whatever, and so they're trying to break in there and get it, and the mother's like, no, you shall not enter. So that's Breathe, and that's coming out. I want to say this year. It's going to be April. Yeah, April of this year.
Okay, gonna have to look for that. Well, another film though, like when I mentioned Hook, like a lot of the films on my list, they're kind of one and done, but they still stand up to this day. But at the same time, I don't really feel that there's anything being made like them anymore. Hook is very near and dear to my heart from my childhood, and I
It's
know a
got
lot
a-
of people feel the same.
Yeah, Hook is definitely one of those movies that, it had so many good elements to it, like you mentioned before when you were talking about Hook. It's a lot of practical effects. The actors are great. I mean, Dustin Hoffman as
Yeah, as
Captain Hook, I remember even like me and my sister, we really enjoyed the film, and it was all like, you have Rufio running around and exactly. So, and I mean like the food fight, like just like the way they did that, where it's like, it's imaginary. And then it's like, finally, he's like, you're playing, Peter. And I'm like, my childhood.
And one of my favorite things
You're
about
doing it, Peter. You're doing it.
one of my favorite things about that story is it's a reminder to us all to not forget our youth, not forget that
Right.
inner child within
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
It's just like in the film, Peter has grown up and he's overweight and he wears glasses and he's concerned about his business and like he doesn't have time for any of that. And the whole movie is reminding him of his childhood, of what he left behind. Don't forget to be a kid. The importance of
Pay attention to your kids.
pay attention
too.
to your kids. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that can still relate to, I feel, to this day. I don't have kids, but I remember what it was like, imagining, and having that playfulness, that innocence, as it were. And it was great in that film to see Peter, Robin Williams, go back to that, and he remembered what it was like to be in Neverland and to not have bills. And I think that's something we all miss, right? Not having bills, not having responsibilities and stuff, and just having that sense of adventure within your heart type thing.
Adventure is out there.
Adventure is out there, exactly. Think happy thoughts. But yeah, and like as for the rest of the films that I mentioned, I feel like it makes me sad to say that I feel like they're kind of lost to time. Titan AE, I don't, and Treasure Planet, movies like that, I don't know if we're going to get anything like that nowadays. And I encourage all of you out there who have kids, share some of these films that we mentioned to your kids so that their legacy may live on, that magic may live on. I definitely don't know if you'd want to share Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. That's just a good time. That's for adults. That's for adults only. It's absolutely hilarious. I don't care how old I get, where I live, what time we're in. That will never not be funny to me. Fight Club. Fight Club, there's a lot of social commentary there.
Yeah.
I really recommend everyone go watch Fight Club if you haven't seen it. If you have seen it, go watch it again, because Project
holds up.
Mayhem
It
is
holds
still
up.
funny. Yeah, his name was Robert Paulson, y'all. But yeah, that's what I got for my list.
I think that's awesome, guys. I think we had a great discussion here. I think a lot of people that listen to us can relate with a lot of these films that we brought up, and specifically for the reasons that we brought these films up.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you haven't seen any of these films out there, I'm sure you've seen at least one of these films that we did bring up in reference. Please go watch. All these films are great, heavy hitters. Of course, we all like them for our own subjective reasons, but I will say that everybody's list here is pretty solid. So, if you haven't seen any of these titles, or if you're interested in a few of these titles that came up and you haven't seen them, go watch those.
Yes.
Absolutely awesome stuff. Please comment too if you have a couple films that you think we might have not covered. Like we said, we could go on forever with a list of movies people should watch, but we wanted to condense it and we wanted to keep it nice and quick and time sensitive. So yeah, you write down what you guys think, and maybe we missed a couple that you think are really worth noting. So write that in the comments for us. Like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, share with a friend, and join us back for more episodes of the Popcorn Square podcast on Mondays and Fridays. I am Neff signing off with
Kage.
And buttons.
Please be safe.